Thank you. So a boy was being driven to football practice by his father. Unfortunately, they were in a terrible car accident on the way, and both were seriously injured. They were taken immediately to the hospital, where they were separated for treatment. The boy was taken almost right away into an operating room, where he was met by a surgical team that was going to try to put him back together. The operation was about to start when all of a sudden the surgeon stepped back and announced, "I cannot perform this operation. This patient is my son." This is a puzzler that some friends of mine and I were given when we were kids. We were asked to try to figure out how that could be possible. I'm embarrassed to tell you how much difficulty we had with this one. The pretzels we turned ourselves into as we tried to figure it out. We guessed that perhaps the injured father was the only surgeon in town, so he needed to get off his sickbed to save his son, but he had amnesia from the car accident, and so until he saw his son's face, he didn't realize that it was going to be his son, and we were told that wasn't the right answer. And then we said, well, maybe the boy's parents were divorced, and the surgeon was the second husband of the boy's mother, and so really his stepfather, but he loved the boy, and he thought of the boy as his son. I cannot tell you how long we tried, and that ultimately we failed to find the most obvious answer to this puzzler. The surgeon was the boy's mother. For 42 years, Legal Momentum has been using the tools of legal advocacy, research, and education to help create a society in which women have all of the rights, the opportunities, and the protections that men do. We at Legal Momentum have helped develop legislation, we've brought test cases, we've led policy initiatives, we've provided legal support, and we've worked to educate the judiciary, law enforcement, legal practitioners, and women and girls themselves in order to help ensure that no one in our society is prevented from succeeding or from being safe just because they are female. And we have made tremendous progress. I like to think that girls today would have an easier time with that puzzler, both that it's more likely that they think that they could be surgeons, and also that when they think about what society is like, it occurs to them that the surgeon could be a woman. They don't immediately think that, oh, surgeon must be male. And when I think about the progress we've made, I look around this room and I'm heartened. I think, boy, the progress is there. We have an incredibly impressive group of women in this room. To begin with, our 4 honorees are simply superstars and an inspiration to us all. We also have in this room past honorees of whom the same can be said, and I look at our many women guests. All of you are professional, interesting, well-educated, successful women, and there are a lot of you. So I think we really have made progress. No one could doubt today in America that that surgeon in the old riddle could be a woman. But unfortunately, despite all our successes, despite how good things look for women when you look around this room, Legal Momentum's work is not yet done. Currently, I think we have problems that fall into 2 big buckets. The first one is not losing all that we have gained. This bucket, I think many of us find the most depressing one, but unfortunately, in the current political and economic climate, we are back to fighting fights that we thought we'd won long ago and seeking to preserve rights and responsibilities that we thought were ours and that we had won long ago. The second bucket that I think about is actually making things better. I think it is important that we not get so focused on just trying to maintain the status quo that we give up all hope of trying to improve things. There are more rights. We do need to advance women's rights. And perhaps most importantly, we as a society need to do a better job of ensuring that the rights that we do have, that existing rights, are a reality for low-income and minority women. While the laws and rules that exist today are far from perfect, we here in this room can all take advantage of what there is there. We know lawyers, we are lawyers, we work well in society, we know what our rights are, and we can enforce them. However, as a practical matter, many women and girls in our society are not so lucky. Because of poverty, disenfranchisement, lack of education, lack of access to legal assistance, and a whole host of reasons, they are simply not able to effectively make use of the rights that they have. Currently, we at Legal Momentum are using targeted litigation and legal assistance, legislative reform, policy research and advocacy, and legal education to try to work to solve some of these problems. Some of the things that we're currently working on are as follows. We're working on ensuring that public school, high school programs are equally available to girls as they are to boys. Hard to believe that they aren't all, but in fact that is the case. We're working to ensure that women, particularly women working in low-wage and non-traditionally female jobs, are not subject to workplace harassment or discrimination, particularly and including pregnancy discrimination. Again, hard to imagine that it's still happening in this day and age, but it is. Terrible, terrible things are happening on job sites, in offices, things like that. We're working to make sure that women retain the right to make their own decisions about reproductive and health issues. We're working to ensure that law enforcement and the courts, from state troopers to judges to tribal court judges on reservations, treat victims of domestic violence and sexual violence respectfully, legally, and fairly. We're working to ensure that the safety net for poor women in this country is available and sufficient. Unfortunately, it's broken right now. And unfortunately, poverty in this country has become a woman's issue. Most of those living in poverty today in the United States are women and their children. In fact, over 40% of single mother families now in the United States now live below the poverty line. And a substantial proportion of the kids who are born today will spend at least a part of their childhood in a single mother household. Those two statistics put together spell out terrible news for the economic security of women and children in this country. We're working to make sure that working conditions for women are fair. That is, we're working to combat the gender wage gap, which really does exist, and to combat gender occupational segregation, which also really does exist. And finally, we're working to address the fact that even with the great strides we've made at the top, even with all the power of the women in this room and the women we know, it is still the fact that well less than 20% of those in Congress are women. Less than 20% of those occupying governors' chairs in the states across the country are women. Less than 20% of the board members or the CEOs of major U.S. public companies are women. And of personal meaning, concern to me, recently, for the first time in a long time, the number of women partners at law firms has begun to trend downwards rather than on an upward slope. So these are just some of the issues that we have addressed over the last year and that we are continuing to address. I really wish there was no need for us, but unfortunately there is. Today we will celebrate and honor 4 women of tremendous accomplishment who inspire us and lead us by their example. And tomorrow, we at Legal Momentum will go back to work to make equality a reality for all women and girls in the United States. We could not do either honor these women sufficiently or go back to fight the good fight to advance women's rights without the help of everybody in this room. And for that, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for being